So, what does it mean when Mars is in Gemini? Let's talk about these two principles and what it looks like both as a transit and in your natal chart. So, Mars is the planet of action, desire, drive, ambition. It also holds our physicality, our physical energy, our sexual energy and desire, any action of creation, creating something in the world. All of these are Mars constructs. What's Gemini about? Gemini is an air sign. It's all about ideas, the intellect, communication, lots of information. There is also an aspect of the twins to Gemini. There's a duality. And this idea of so many different pieces and ideas of information flying around. There can be a sense of mental overdrive with Gemini. So, what do we get when we put together the fire of Mars with the very active air of Gemini? And I'm going to invite you, as always, to feel into what these concepts are like and how this might show up for you, especially as we're looking at Mars moving through Gemini currently in the end of 2022 through early 2023. So what's that going to look like? We've got a combustibleness, is that a word, of the fire sign in the air, a lot of mental energy. There's a potential here for explosiveness, certainly for reactiveness, for the mind, for an overdriven mind to get kind of carried away even further with so much energy. There's a lot of intensity here. On top of that, if you're watching this end of 2022, Mars is also retrograding. So that's just going to put another interesting plot twist into the mix. And I'll invite you to check out my video on Mars retrograde to feel into how that is also going to play in here. But we're talking about a lot of, I'm going to call it explosive energy that could look like arguments. It could look like mental overdrive to extreme levels. There's also some really powerful energy happening here that we can work with. And when we can understand what's happening and how to work with it, we can harness this energy in the very powerful ways that it can serve us. So, how do we work with the challenges present of Mars in Gemini? Journaling or any form of free writing might be particularly helpful here. I'm just going to give you a few suggestions, feel into what resonates for you. Because we're thinking about all of that mental activity needing to come to clarity. And when it does, there's a huge amount of power to the clarity that's going to come. We'll talk about that in a second. But connecting to your truth is going to be extra powerful in this time. And this is particularly true when we think about the online world and social media. I would see Mars and Gemini as a really, really good time to be extra mindful and extra maybe making some brand new boundaries, choices, and decisions about what you're absorbing on social media. And is the energy and the information that is coming in, is it of service to you and serving your highest growth? Good time to think about that, to take some space, to make some cuts, to make some look at being that conscious, that steward of your consciousness, so that you're really, really highly aware of what you're allowing in. If you know me, you know one of my favorite simple activities for settling and working with your nervous system is the simple pause. The pause, the giving space to whatever is happening, allowing the organic breath to just connect and drop in, and noticing and allowing whatever sensations are present so that they can move and discharge and dissipate. Mars in Gemini is a really good time for this, especially if you're prone to spinning out, anxiety, loops of anxious thought, anything like that. So at any time that you need, I'll invite you to maybe connect a hand to the chest if it feels good. to allow the breath to just drop in, to give yourself that pause and give yourself that space. And connecting to the breath is actually a very Gemini construct for what it's worth. Gemini rules the lungs. So in this fiery, combustible time, knowing that that breath is there and allowing it to easily drop in, easily connect is going to resource you. When we can work with the energy in this way, when we can allow the space, allow it to process, this is an incredibly powerful time for generating new ideas, for clarity that is going to move you forward in the ways you have been waiting for. And again, Mars retrograde means this is a process, and it could feel a little discombobulating as you get to that clarity. But there's some real clarity of thought, clarity of focus, of intention, of ideas that is possible during this time. By the way, Mars usually spends about 6 weeks in each sign, but because of the retrograde we're in, Mars is actually in Gemini for 7 months. Started in August of 2022, goes till March 2023. So just know that we've got this whole space of time of this very fire, air, powerful energy going on that is a deeply powerful time, ultimately, for a lot of clarity to emerge. And that's a good thing, even if there is an intensity to it in the process. But that's why we want to remember all of our tools to allow the energy to be there and not drive us. So when we can connect and we can stay centered and your consciousness stays running the show rather than the scatteredness or the drivenness, then all of that power can serve you. If you have Mars and Gemini in your natal chart, you can kind of get a sense of what that's about based on the first part of this video. Again, we're taking these two principles and feeling into how they work together. So Mars, your physical drive, Gemini, this very quick, facile jumping to new ideas. There's often a quickness to action, for better, for worse, with Mars and Gemini, tendency towards fast decisiveness, and also perhaps towards impulsiveness. There's almost certainly going to be a need for variety, stimulation, a lot of things. As always, what this looks like for you is going to be colored and tempered or exacerbated by the rest of your chart, but there is going to be in some way some kind of a strength and a quickness, and maybe a quick temperedness, probably a wittiness, because Gemini, of course, is all about words and communication and ideas. And that need, again, for stimulation and variety, thriving on variety, and probably an intolerance for boredom, especially mentally. So all of the things that I suggested earlier are going to be helpful to you if you're a Mars in Gemini person natally. The pause, the space, the connection, the clarity, the awareness of how much energy and power you have in the mental realm, not letting that rule you, but connecting inward so that all this energy can serve and fuel your brilliance. Because there's a very powerful, strong, witty, clear brilliance to Mars in Gemini. And the more you can connect to that inner centeredness so that it's not driving you, but this energy is serving you, the more you'll allow that genius to come through. Hope this is helpful. Sending you lots of love, again, especially if you're watching this late 2022 until January of 2023 is when Mars turns around. And then, as I mentioned, it will stay in Gemini until March of 2023. So this whole period is an interesting time with all that fire and air. And this period until mid-January of 2023, while we're in the retrograde phase, is just going to be extra interesting. And I'll invite you to watch my video on Mars retrograde and put that together with all the energy we're talking about here as you move forward with embodying and holding your highest connection to truth. Sending you lots of love. Take good care.